and welcome to the Haddonfield United Methodist Church Weekly Sermon Podcast. For more information about us or anything you hear in this episode, be sure to visit haddonfieldumc.org. We hope that this and every episode can help sustain you on the journey as together we seek to put our faith into action.
Hello and welcome to the Sermon Podcast at Haddonfield United Methodist Church. I'm Pastor JiSun Yang, serving as an associate pastor for caring ministry here, and I'm so glad you found us and joined us today. We are in the middle of the sermon series, The Wind of Change.
The question of identity is a lifelong journey, as we constantly face the winds of change, whether we're ready or not. While change is both essential and inevitable, it leads to growth on the other side. How can we live through this season in the fullness of God? Join us for our sermon series, The Winds of Change, as we explore how to find peace with ourselves and each other through the stories of people in the Bible who faced life's challenges in different seasons.
Today we are going to go deeper into the text in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15, the parable of the Prodigal Son. So here is today's reading. Then Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of property that will belong to me.' So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country. And there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout the country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate." Are you good at organizing things? I should confess, organizing is not exactly my strong suit, but thankfully I live with someone who is really good at it. When preparing to move a house, organizing skills are invaluable. And I remember when we moved to Haddonfield a couple of years ago, we ended up discarding many boxes, mostly filled with books that we brought from South Korea when we moved in initially, and other items that had been stored in the basement but never used. Once we realized we hadn't touched them in over a decade, it became clear it was time to let them go. I haven't started literally packing yet for my upcoming move, but mentally, I've already begun the process. My closet is full of clothes from different stages of life. A t-shirt more than 10 years old with a hole in it that my mother-in-law bought for me. Jeans that haven't fit in years. I have every reason for each item why I should keep them. I even have a uniform from the company where I worked in South Korea, a deep navy jacket, a gray skirt, and pants. They no longer fit, and I will never return to that company. Yet, I've held on to them, not because I missed the time, but because they remind me of who I was in my 20s. They hold the stories of struggle, challenge, uncertainty, and joy. Our closet and home are not just cluttered with clothes and stuff. They are filled with versions of ourselves we've outgrown over time. I know packing will be a process of facing the changes I've lived through, letting go and embracing who I am now and who I am still becoming. In the Gospel of Luke chapter 15, Jesus tells a story about a young man who undergoes a dramatic change in his life, not just where he lives, in how he understands who he is. The very familiar parable of this prodigal son is the last in the stories of three parables that portray God as seeking out that which is lost. Jesus told these three stories in response to a complaint raised by the Pharisees and scribes who had power back then concerning Jesus' association with people known to be sinners. So what does this story teach us about God and ourselves? The word prodigal means wastefully extravagant, and it reflects how this young man lived for a time. He asked his father to give him his share of the inheritance right now, and surprisingly, the father agreed. The son packed everything and left home. Maybe he didn't like the way his father and his brother or others lived. Maybe he thought he knew better about life. Maybe he was chasing a dream and passion, and he had a clear plan for his life. That plan didn't include staying at home. That desire to break free and prove ourselves is a part of human nature. However, the problem wasn't just that desire. It was its timing and priority. He demanded his future inheritance now. It didn't belong to him yet, but he claimed ownership. He felt entitled to it before due course. In Jesus' day, Jewish inheritance laws, rooted in Mosaic law, generally took effect upon the death of a parent or a guardian. The firstborn always receives a double portion, so this younger son in the story would receive 1/3 of his father's wealth because he had one older brother. But land and property were expected to stay in the family, passed down as a sacred gift from God. For the younger son to ask for his share early, maybe sell it off for cash, was not only shameful, it was breaking tradition, law, and community trust. He took advantage of the system by applying it selectively in a way that served his personal desire. How often do conflicts begin when we start making exceptions for ourselves? When we expect the rules to apply to others but not to us? Of course, it's important to question whether laws and traditions are just and fair, gracious and merciful, but if so, we are not exempt. But the good news is it's the same with God's love and mercy. No one is exempt from the power of God's love and mercy to receive offered even before we are aware of it. We can be critical of this younger son, as it was clear that he made a poor choice in his life, but he ultimately paid the price for it. The crisis that the story turns to is a famine that struck where the younger son lived. Because he squandered his wealth and he had no resources left to help him survive the famine. To survive, the younger son humiliated himself by working for Gentiles as a swineherd. Worse than that, he ate the same food as the unclean animals, which could not even fill his stomach. His reality was too harsh to survive in a distant country by himself. When he reached the bottom, he thought about his father's house, where everything was abundant and enough for everyone, including the hired hands. He found the flickering hope that perhaps if there was even a slight possibility, his father would be gracious enough to accept him as a servant. It was worth trying. I remember what Pastor Chris shared long ago. When we are humiliated, we grow in humility. No one wants to be humiliated, and it's too embarrassing. However, we learn from failure much more from success. We grow much more from our mistakes. As no one is perfect, the important question is, how we handle it, and how we can help others to grow when they make mistakes. In the mess, in the silence, the younger son remembers home. He begins to see who really is. He gets up and he begins the journey back, rehearsing his apology the whole way back home. The younger son was capable of shifting his course quickly, turning to his father. This is the heart of real change, transformation. The younger son did not just change location, he changed from the inside out, from pride to humility, from pretense to honesty, from shame to hope. It took hitting rock bottom to feel the wind of shift within him, to remember who he was and where he came from. What happened next is almost too good to be true. While the son is still far off in the distance, the father sees him. He runs to him. It's far from what a respected man would do in Jesus' time and culture. But love does not wait. He wraps his son in his embrace before a word of apology crosses his lips. Restoration of relationship happens not because he said sorry, but because he came back home. The father called for the best robe, a ring, sandals, and feast to celebrate the return of his lost son. There is no punishment, there is no lecture, only restoration and forgiveness. To the prodigal son, God's love and grace were extravagant. Yes, we are capable of wasting what we have, time, resources, talent, and life. Sometimes we make crazy decisions, but God's love and grace are much greater than our ability to mess up. When we experience love and grace through the people around us, it's incredibly powerful to transform our hearts and lives forever. But the question that arose in me was why the father granted the younger son's request in the first place. Throughout the story, it was clear that the father loved his children deeply, but wouldn't it have been better if the father had said no to the younger son's request? Couldn't the father protect him from any possible challenges or harm in his son's life? If the father had wanted to prevent it, he was more than capable, but he chose not to. Rather, the father let the younger son make decisions in his life and gave him the opportunity to explore the world and pursue his passion. Meanwhile, his father always prepared a room for him to return home. It reflects the nature of God's love. The greater love is not coercive or forceful. God gives us free will and second, third, and many chances to try and grow. God is willing to have our backs, be our home where we can always return. When we take courage, one step toward God, God always moves multiple steps toward us because God cannot wait to meet us, embrace us, and love us. This is who God is. God is not the one who is waiting for us to make mistakes to punish us. God is not just a judge. God is not just a king to rule over us, but God is the loving parent who runs to us, embraces us, and rejoices with us. The wind of change is always blowing. Sometimes it's a gentle breeze nudging us forward, and other times it's a storm that turns our world upside down. Whether we welcome it or resist it, change is inevitable. And like packing for a move, it forces us to sort through what we've held on to, what still serves us, and what we need to release. Maybe the wind of change is blowing through your life right now. Maybe you are sorting through emotional closet, letting go of who you were and making spaces for who you are becoming. Or maybe you are standing at a crossroad, unsure of what comes next. Whatever your season, you are not alone in the wind or in the storm. God is not only with you, God runs to meet you. The same spirit that brought the son home is blowing in your direction, stirring hope and whispering grace and paving the way for you. Is there anyone around you who might need an extra dose of grace and forgiveness, encouragement to experience? Let us flow through God's love and grace, which we have freely received. Just like we don't know where the wind comes from and goes to. We don't know where the Spirit comes from and goes to. But let the wind of change, wind of the Spirit, carry us into the arms of the one who never changes in loving us. Stay in the love of God and have a good week.
Thanks again for listening. For more information about us or anything you heard in this episode, be sure to visit haddonfieldumc.org. Through today's scripture and message, we pray that you find strength to go deeper into love of God and neighbor as we work together to be the church in a hurting world.